third and goal. Fires. Got it. McNamara hit from behind. The ball is out, and Penn State's got it. Will throw fake. And caught. Touchdown number 4 for Aller. This one to Lambert Smith.
Well, that looked like fun. The Penn State whiteout is just the gift that keeps on giving. Let's welcome in Tyler Calvaruso, who is with us from Lions 24/7. Tyler, first you got the win on the field, then clearly the win in the locker room, but there were some wins on the trail as well, and running back Taiqwai Hayes joining one of the best backfields in the nation. What does he bring to that group?
Really, the best way to put it is he brings that aliquip of toughness to the program. You know, he might not have the notoriety of some of Penn State's other running back commits. You know, Quentin Martin in 2024, he's a top 50 prospect. Corey Smith, he's a 4-star. And even in 2026, we have Messiah Mickens, who's the number 30 prospect in that class. And then in the 2025 class, you have Keandre Barker, who's a top 24/7 prospect. Hayes might not be as highly ranked as those guys, but I've talked to a bunch of people familiar with his game who feel that he has the talent and capability to be the next high-level in-state running back to play for the Nittany Lions. And a lot of that has to do with his toughness, his running style, low center of gravity, puts his pads through people. Really just a physical kid. The kind of runner Jaywan Sider is going to have to love in his running back room. And then there's a lot of excitement inside of Lash about Taiqwai Hayes joining the program.
Tyler, big man on campus this weekend. That is the number 1 quarterback in the country in the class of 2025. Bryce Underwood from the state of Michigan, back on campus for the first time since January. This was a big recruitment. A lot of people involved here. Colorado, Deion Sanders, Michigan, LSU in it as well. What can you tell us about James Franklin and Penn State's efforts with the number 1 quarterback in the class of 2025?
There's been a lot of positive feedback about the way this visit played out. Underwood himself, he's a little bit on the quieter side. He doesn't do a whole lot of talking after some of his visits. But Penn State feels like it covered some good ground with him, getting him back on campus this weekend. When he visited in January, that's when his offer from the Nittany Lions came in. That was kind of a foundational visit for the staff. They've been looking to get him back to campus since it happened for the whiteout, and really just a lot of positives coming out of that visit. And I think Underwood deciding to make it back to campus during a weekend in which it was a loaded slate with a lot of intriguing games and games he could have checked out because a lot of those programs are heavily involved in his recruitment. He decided to make it to Penn State, decided to check out that whiteout atmosphere, and it just speaks to what the whiteout is for Penn State, what it means for Penn State on the recruiting trail. It's a big draw. It's pretty much a brand at this point for the program. So getting a guy like Underwood back for that was a big deal. And look, is this one going to happen for the Nittany Lions? It's probably more on the long shot side of things. But, hey, look, when you get a guy back on campus for a visit, you've got a fighter's chance. I think that's what Penn State is feeling with Bryce Underwood right now.
Definitely one of the better atmospheres of the weekend. The game, not so much, but Bryce Underwood has certainly been seeing some good football this fall. Let's ask about a few more 2025 targets. You've got 4-star athlete Brady O'Hara and 4-star tight end Ryan Ghea, and another one, 4-star safety Kainoa Winston, all visiting this weekend. Big visit weekend for Penn State, but how much traction did they make with those 3 priority targets in particular?
I'd say a pretty significant amount. O'Hara, just starting with him as a Pittsburgh native, this was his 7th visit to Penn State of the calendar year. And when you have an in-state recruit making it to campus that often, you kind of start to get the sense that the writing may be on the wall. I got the chance to catch up with O'Hara coming out of his visit. He's not really set on a concrete commitment timeline right now, but Penn State is trending in the right direction with him. The same can be said about Winston, whose cousin, KJ, lines up on the back end of the Nittany Lions secondary at safety. He's really enjoyed getting the chance to make it to campus and watch him play. And the main thing that has really stood out to him about Penn State, other than his cousin being on the field, the hospitality that he's greeted with from the staff every single time he makes it to campus. Penn State is starting to feel more and more like home for him. So the Nittany Lions have a lot going for them in that recruitment. And then with Ghea, it's ironic. The way the whiteout game played out kind of played into Penn State's hands regarding his recruitment, because the way things started, their offense was not necessarily clicking on all cylinders early on, so they had to get the ground game going. The tight ends had to get their helmets dirty, do some blocking before they broke through in the passing attack later on. And Ghea told me that he was actually loved seeing that, because he feels as a multifaceted tight end, he could do both of those things for Penn State. He could be a blocker. He could be a guy who goes out and gets passes in the receiving game. So he was really intrigued with Penn State's offensive scheme. He sees it as a fit. And right now the Nittany Lions are indeed in his top group. So a lot of productivity coming out of those 3 visits.
Tyler, we heard from Director of Recruiting Steve Wiltfong earlier in the show talking about 4-star defensive lineman Ernest Willer, also a 3-star edge Jaylen Harvey. It seems like Penn State is really turning their focus to those guys, but they already have 24 guys committed in a top 10 class, or a class that's banging on the outside of the top 10. So what's left on the board for Penn State so far?
Not a whole lot, but there are still definitely some names out there. Willer, Harvey, and Penn State's working that flip front. You also have to take into account, potentially saving some spots for portal candidates during the offseason. That is an avenue the program explored this past offseason. It's something that they are going to explore again. Guys like Harvey and Willer are definitely stealing the spotlight when it comes to Penn State's 2024 recruiting right now. But like I said, the flip front's being monitored, and staff's also keeping an eye on some potential late risers as well, specifically on the defensive line. There were a couple of edge rushers on campus over the weekend who don't have an offer from the Nittany Lions yet, but they're being evaluated. The staff is looking to see more of that senior season film, and if an offer comes for that, I think those guys are going to be more firmly on the radar, and that's going on at every single position pretty much at this point. Anytime you can dig up a late cycle gem, as the Nittany Lions did last year when they landed Chimdi Ono out of Dundalk High in Maryland, it's something the staff would like to pull off, and there is still some room in the class for that to transpire.
Yeah, you mentioned the staff is keeping an eye on some potential flip targets. I want to ask about one of those, and that's 4-star wide receiver and Michigan State commit Nick Marsh. Now, while he is still committed to the Spartans, we talked about this earlier on in the show, just the unknowns happening with Mel Tucker and the coaching situation there. So definitely a guy that could be available. But where do things stand right now with Marsh and Penn State?
Even before that uncertainty with Michigan State kicked in, Marsh wasn't exactly shutting down lines of communication with Penn State. He took an official visit to State College in June. That visit went very, very well. There was a point where I had a crystal ball prediction in for the Nittany Lions to seal the deal and get that one done. That was the intel coming out of that visit, but he made it back to Michigan State later in the month, had a really good official visit there. He has members of his family who they would prefer he plays his college ball a little bit closer to home. That is ultimately what won out. But, the circumstances are vastly different now, and relationships are going to play a big part for Nick Marsh moving forward. He has a lot of comfort with that Penn State staff. The staff has continued to work on him, and really the goal is to get him back on campus, maybe a little bit closer to the early signing period, depending on how his recruitment plays out. So it's kind of just wait and see mode in that regard, whether he's going to make it back to campus. But that's a recruitment the Penn State staff not going to take its foot off the gas. They're going to keep going after him.
Certainly not. Sounds like a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm sure, Tyler, you will be all over it. Thank you for being on the show. You can check out more of his work and all the great work from the folks at Lions247.com.